I think Fnatic with the first Camille ban, they're saying, yep, we do expect you to play one of these carries, and we remove the first one.
So with Trundle taken off the board, you are expecting something like an early rotation of something like the Olaf, perhaps even the Skarner as well. We saw a lot of priority on it yesterday in our third place decider. G2, by being red side, they're forced into this Swain ban, but also a respect ban in the Sion.
Have to see G2 with the last ban here. Caitlyn is still left open. We know Rekkles can play it, even though we haven't seen it that much from him during the actual split. Could be a choice for Fnatic, unless they're looking at something as like a Tahm Kench pick, which will be very valuable between the two teams.
Couple seconds left for that first pick priority. Obviously, jungler's all taken out the pool, and it will be the Braum locked in for Hylissang.
Oh, they were watching a splash yesterday, I guess, with Hylissang early picking Braum every game. This is not something that should hurt G2 too much, because Wadid definitely preferred the Tahm Kench whenever he had the chance to play it.
I also wonder here if Fnatic are hoping that G2 go for something like the Caitlyn, try and get that early lane dominance down in the bottom lane. We saw Ryze pretty much taken off the board throughout the semifinals and yesterday in the third place decider, and now it's going to be in PerkZ hands, one of his most comfortable champions from the regular season.
If you are Fnatic, and to try and explain the first pick Braum, one of the things they do like is when Hylissang can try and make some plays. They play a lot of these comps where he's allowed to roam, he can then connect, you know, a bit of CC onto one target, and they can single down one member. But Tahm Kench is here to try and counter that as much as possible. And the Ryze pick, we talked about mid lane being undecided. Ryze is one of the strongest picks in the current meta, especially if you play around him. But that's a unique AD carry for Rekkles.
Unique indeed. Most played AD carry for Rekkles in that Tristana, and I've heard so many people say when you get it, it's GG already.
Well, we'll have to see if G2 can handle it, given that looking at what's available right now, a lot of jungle bans, this could be an opportunity for G2 to lock in the Kha'Zix, but instead, they're looking for a little bit more engage in the Zac.
Trying to match as well against the Sejuani tankiness from both junglers, scaling on both sides, but Rekkles Tristana, this is a pick a lot of teams ban away. It's actually the most banned champion against Fnatic in playoffs because, yeah, you don't want to deal with it. On G2's side, I think they're saying we know he's going to play it if it's open. We can draft around that. Strong scaling on their side. A lot of mobility from a Zac, and then of course Tahm Kench ulti plus Ryze ult. You can port your entire team from lane to lane, trying to make plays while Rekkles is scaling.
And now I wonder if G2 are going to look to try and get a bit of lane dominance of their own. Remember that in the early laning phase, Tristana can be pushed around. Champions like Jhin and Caitlyn are both stuff that Hjärnan loves to play and could go for.
Yeah, and we saw Hjärnan dominate on that Jhin earlier here in playoffs. There's a good chance he wants to grab it for himself. Synergizes nicely as well with things like Zac, who can jump in from long range, and you can pick people off.
And we talked about Wunder playing carries. Look at the 3 carries that have now been banned away. Camille, Fiora, and Gangplank. It feels like they're trying to pressure G2 onto something like a Sion so they can answer them with a Cho.
And if Wunder's playing a tank, we might see Hjärnan on a more scaling AD carry, where he becomes the one to actually play around in the late game. They already got the Tahm Kench to protect in the laning phase, and that's what we're getting now with this Jinx here. So they're simply saying, we realize there's a chance we have to play tank top, so we need Hjärnan to be the big man.
Oh, interesting. The decision-making here from G2 will explore how they make that Jinx work. For Fnatic, how do they round out their team composition? We're going to see what Caps and Bwipo are going to play.
Well, right now they've got Engage with the Sejuani, and they have decent follow-up with the Braum as well. They're looking for something safe to go into the Azir. Talia could work here for Caps if he wants to try and bring a bit of wave clear and roaming pressure. The alternative, of course, is the Orianna, should he want a little bit more laning power.
I love this pick, and I especially love to see it in a game 1 if he locks it in, because if you win with Aurelion Soul, the enemy team has to respect it in every single pick and ban phase from here. But it's gonna be Karma mid lane for Caps instead. Looks bit of a change.
Yeah, Fnatic looking to play entirely around Rekkles this game. They do still have decent push in the middle lane.
Gentlemen, I see 2 team compositions that seem pretty focused around their AD carries as one of the pivotal members in the team compositions.
And that's where initially we said Fnatic's bot lane should have the advantage. Let's see if someone like Hjärnan can change that in the first game. Of course, there is Ryze versus Karma in the mid lane, a ton of early game damage on both sides, but Karma still, when it goes full late game, it's more about the utility she brings and a bit of burst damage up front.
But I'm looking at this G2 composition and I'm thinking Jankos is going to want to gank PerkZ. One of the big easy lane setups is in the middle lane. Looks like Caps isn't going to be running the cleanse. You do have the potential gank setup, especially with Zac coming from all these unique angles, the flash in from the Ryze as well. I see a lot of potential kill pressure and maybe they want to put Caps in an uncomfortable situation.
We also saw Fnatic come in with a plan of remove carries from top lane, make it a tank v tank matchup. That favors Bwipo and Fnatic because then Wunder is not the one G2 can play around. Tank v tank top means we look for the other lanes.
Oh, looking at the other lanes and the question mark of this mid lane matchup, Karma into Ryze. What a tense start to the EU LCS Spring Split Finals. Fnatic taking on G2. We'll see how the decision making works out in game. Just as a reminder to everybody at home, we will once again be running our POV stream, which we'll get to in just a moment as Grabs and Delafalco shake hands for the first time of hopefully many throughout the course of the day. There's your team compositions once again. Guys, jump onto Twitter, let us know your thoughts, and check out twitch.tv/RyGames2 if you want to check out the POV stream for G2 PerkZ.
Ooh, that's going to be a fun one. In the middle lane, 4-time defending champion PerkZ, looking to make a 5th one here today. I know that Ocelot had a lot of confidence in his team in the dressing room earlier on today, and now we are getting into game 1.
We are indeed. Copenhagen, help me introduce game 1 of your Spring Split Finals. Ladies and gentlemen, let's set the scene. G2 versus Fnatic. All-time records are in favor of G2 eSports. 16 wins to 11. This is the first time they meet in a finals, and Deficio, we've had the pleasure of seeing these two organizations over many years, but this is the first time they meet in such a pivotal series.
Yeah, and a lot of people look at last year as the year where we would get Fnatic versus G2, but Fnatic never made it into the final. This year, however, whenever they play G2 eSports, they've won 2-0 in the regular season. Both games, funny enough, were with G2 winning early, but then Fnatic coming back late. This game here, there's a lot of focus now on especially the AD carries.
Yeah, because down in the bottom lane, Rekkles, he has his comfort of Tristana. He's a guy that's willing to play and pick it. He's so confident in how he's able to execute it. And Hjärnan, during the regular season, did not really show the strongest of performances. Coming into semifinals, he really did step up. We heard a lot of praise from the other members of G2 saying how much he was able to carry the team. And now they're both on hyper carries. Both these teams are going to rely on them to be the big damage threats later on.
And before we get to the point where the AD carries can take over team fights, we look towards mid. We saw there with the graphic, we said it already coming into it. This is the matchup that's undecided for us. We cannot predict straight away if Caps will beat PerkZ or the other way around. A lot of it's gonna come down to Jankos and Broxah. Broxah in the semifinal camped the mid lane, killed Jizuke from Vitality so many times. And it was not something we've really seen before. I want to see if that's the playstyle again for Fnatic, because they got the early damage from Karma.
And I love the development that Broxah as a jungler has made over the last year, because you think back to when he initially joined Fnatic, he was this cool playmaker on champions like Lee Sin and Jarvan. He wasn't afraid to make those crazy plays, and over time, he kind of moved back from that, kind of filled this role of just being that supportive jungler. But recently, we've seen him grow into this, I can work with Caps, we can be an extremely strong duo, and it was a big part of their success in the semifinal.
It will indeed, and of course, if you want to see how Caps and PerkZ do in that lane, check out the POV stream. This is one quick reminder, RyGames2. Heard a few complaints yesterday about being very grayscale. We'll see if that'll be any different today. Because of course we've touched on that 2v2, and we'll see how Jankos will impact those lanes. Jankos definitely a standout player, first time in the finals, and already being a little bit invaded on. If you look at the minimap, Broxah sitting just behind him on the Grump, and he's going to be challenging. There's not a lot of support from Fnatic though. You can see first to move was Wadid.
One of the big issues with Zac is he does use a lot of his own health to clear through the jungle, so you can always feel confident invading onto a Zac, knowing that you have that health advantage, and with Rekkles and Hylissang getting that early push, Broxah was able to get in, get a bit of vision, get that insight as to where Jankos was. Looks like he's going to go back to base and do his first buy.
Now, it is interesting we have so much scaling on both sides in the first game. Yesterday we had a lot of aggression, early compositions where junglers were ganking left and right. This one is tank versus tank in the jungle, tank versus tank in the top lane, and same for support. So there's a lot of focus on actually just kind of playing a little bit safer early and get a few items, get a few levels, except for just around mid. It seems to be the only lane where we could potentially get some 1v1 action.
And of course, playing the first game of a potential 5, feeling your opponents aren't playing the slightly, I'm going to use this term, and correct me if I'm wrong, slightly easier to execute team compositions. A little bit more linear than maybe some split pushing styles that we've seen in the past. It's a good way to break yourselves open into the game, and we'll see what Bwipo and Wunder can do as they will scale up and eventually become more impactful in the later stage.
You know, and it's interesting as well because I had an opportunity to chat with Bwipo a little bit last night, and he was telling me a little bit about all these top lane matchups and how confident he feels on champions like the Cho'Gath. And right now, with Wunder on that champion, they may be looking for a gank up top.
All right, Jankos, the First Blood King, looking to live up to his namesake. Stretching strike connects, will pull Bwipo back. That's very nice. Elastic slingshot comes in, gets the knockup. First blood on the cards. Bwipo's going to go down, and G2 strike first.
Wunder on this Cho'Gath here. He had the counter pick. Yes, he's on a tank, but he's still able to do very well in this early laning phase. Because not only is he currently winning on CS, he had a lane that was pushing against him. Jankos timed that perfectly to appear on top side, and then they gank the young rookie from Fnatic.
It is so difficult for a Sion to play into this matchup. He cannot deal with all the sustain that Wunder's able to throw out, and as a result, he set up the lane nicely. They get this early kill. Jankos is the one that strikes first.
Exactly as expected for a man with that sort of title. I love that 8-1 win-loss for the Braum for Hylissang. We'll talk about that in a second, but just a well-executed gank.
Now for Broxah, he invested vision towards the bot side. He wanted to keep an eye on where Jankos was, but for Jankos, he knew that there was little vision towards the top side. Bwipo was overextended, and it became an easy first play.
And I love the fact that he connects the Q and then he waits. The flash then comes out, and then he pulls his move and actually smacks them together, so suddenly Bwipo cannot escape. He ends up going down. That's important for G2, also just the mental edge. Bwipo is the young rookie, the guy replacing Soaz, who's sitting with his injury, unable to play, and it's the first time this man is stepping on a big stage. There's a lot of pressure on him, despite it being a Wunder favorite matchup from the get-go.
You know, and it's funny because when you talk to him, he says that there's little to no pressure on him because
there's always pressure.
He is the underdog. No one's expecting him to perform, so he can just play his style, he can do his thing, and he feels like a lot of the blame isn't going to fall on top of him because when you're playing with Caps and Rekkles, you're not supposed to be the star anymore.
Now let's see what sort of counterplay Fnatic have on the cards. The root will connect onto PerkZ. He's still got Cleanse and Flash available. Winter's Bite from Hylissang flies a little wide, and PerkZ holds his nerve, realizes there's no threat, and easily walks away.
Rekkles left in the 1 versus 2. G2 aren't quite quick enough to find any kind of punish, and Jankos will end up going back to base. But this is something that you do often see a lot from Hylissang. He likes to roam around the map. Deficio, you mentioned it in the draft. He is a playmaker, and he's definitely very confident on champions like the Braum. Very early on into the game, already looking for those roams.
Taking a look down at the bottom lane. We've actually not looked too much down here. It's been a bit of a farm fest. 60 CS for Rekkles. He's got back to pick up his Berserker's Greaves. Hjärnan's already picked up the BF Sword in that matchup, and small advantage for Hylissang and Rekkles, but they're getting to that point where ultimates are available and some plays can be made, because I remember Hylissang from playoffs, his Braum was extremely aggressive.
Yeah, and that's the thing we can see from him. As long as the team can follow, it looks really good. Gotta see what Jankos is up to after successfully ganking the top lane once. For now, it is just pure vision and continue farming. We'll find a few more wards on his side, but Rekkles Tristana is the one I actually want to talk about real quick. Because a lot of people are like, why is Rekkles so good at Tristana? What is he doing that's so special? I mean, first of all, he's just extremely good at playing team fights, which is where Tristana can shine. Second of all, she has a jump. She can be very aggressive in her positioning, and he can use that to find an opening for the first kill that gets him a reset, and he can just pop off completely. And it's very hard to then stop him.
It certainly is, but he has to get to that point. And one of the things you can also praise Rekkles for is, regardless on how bad the matchup is, he always seems to come out very healthy during the laning phase. You only have to look at his CSD record to identify that Tristana is typically a weak laning phase champion, but Rekkles never makes it look like that.
And I want to see if Fnatic in this game want to actually do what they do sometimes with this Tristana, lane swap with it later. Let's see what happens here, junglers.
Oh, Broxah's going to get jumped on by the Realm Warp. Oh, beautiful ultimate! Stops PerkZ the moment he arrives, and that's the mechanics that Broxah showed up with on the EU LCS stage. G2 do not find a second kill.
G2, they're trying to be proactive though, looking to punish Broxah as he's moving through his own half of the jungle. Realm Warp being used very early on, and unfortunately G2 are not able to find anything, so Fnatic continuing the stall. Remember, a lot of this composition revolves around Rekkles. He is one of the main damage dealers. When you aren't on this Karma, you're going much more towards a poke support role rather than a big damage dealer like Ryze.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of Karma players still build a ton of AP. It's not the old like Athene's Ardent Center rush instantly. It is like you get your tier, you fully stack it, you upgrade it, Death Cap comes in fairly quickly as well, and you get a ton of AP in the mid game. So your poke damage is insane, but as you highlighted, Vedius, once the actual fight breaks out, when it's 3 tanks and a supportive mid laner, yeah, it's about the AD carry.
And when you got Rekkles on your team, you absolutely want it to be about him. All right, let's take a look. Jankos with another gank. Gets the chilling smite down. Stretching strike connects once again. Pulling Caps backwards. There's the let's bounce. That's going to deliver Caps to the mid lane. Caps survives a hell of a long time. Caps escaped. How did he do that?
Caps actually gets out of that situation. It looked like such a well-executed gank from Jankos, but Caps survived.
I was convinced he was going to die 3 separate times. He's cheeky enough to even teleport back to the mid lane and even get some damage
Going
down
for a trade, Trevor.
Gets the root down.
Even gets the cleanse. He was worried because he saw Broxah coming in from the flank. He knew that if he didn't get out of this situation, he could be in dire straits. Caps, beautiful execution from him.
All the action early, it's Jankos setting it up from G2's side with the Zac. It's what we often see when Zac gets picked, doesn't get shot down in the early game. He's so active at finding different ways to appear in these lanes. I think Jankos, man, yeah, for sure, he was like, we got it. Double flash to try to finish. I think Caps just shielded himself in time to stay alive towards the end. So 2 big summoners blown on G2 side. Of course, the same for Caps.
So 10 minutes into the first game, G2 with a small gold lead, nothing to speak of. CS differences also negligible. Only Rekkles with a small lead. He's picked himself up that BF sword after returning back to lane, and towers have not necessarily been chipped a whole lot, so we're definitely into this mid to late game team fight, team comp style.
But look at Fnatic, they've taken control over the bot side river. You would imagine that their initial goal is to go towards this Cloud Drake, an objective that if you get in the early game, does give you that extra bit of movement speed, makes these movements a little bit easier around the map.
What we typically see from Fnatic though, when Rekkles gets a few items under his belt, is to start playing more towards his lane. Tristana is still one of the best at taking down early turrets. He has the attack speed to actually get a few hits off and then back away. We already saw Broxah down here. He just recalled. If Caps can push in the mid lane, he can roam first. PerkZ should always be able to match though with the Ryze ulti. So it makes it a little bit easier for G2 to defend against Fnatic's potential siege in the bottom lane.
I'm just keeping my eyes on what Jankos is up to. We talked a little bit in the draft about how he could look to set up a lot of ganks around the middle lane. So far, he's found one successful gank. And given that there is no flash, I feel like a repeat gank in that area of the map would make sense. This time, I would expect Caps to not be able to get out.
We see one of the problems for Fnatic is warding around mid to protect him. Jankos is not spotted at the moment, coming from that top side. Caps is playing very safe. He's okay for now.
He didn't pull a trigger, Deficio. Jankos very active in the early game. We've seen multiple ganks while he's only secured 1 kill. There's a replay of the mechanics at the bottom of your screen. Just really well played.
Yeah, so keep an eye on the shield. It was used initially there. Karma gets also, I believe, the heal off of the W as well. And then just as they flash in, the shield just comes off cooldown once again. Good management of his abilities to get the most out of that situation.
Now, question. Didn't even see...
Oh, Broxah even body blocked. Holy, that would have actually killed him as well.
Whether that was intentional or not...
We'll assume it was intentional.
Awesome. That was awesome. Broxah saving Caps' life. Now, I have a question for you, gentlemen. Broxah has been silent for 12 minutes on that Sejuani. His team is still even, 600 gold behind. That's not a whole lot to speak of. When does he start activating for Fnatic? I know we've talked about the Rekkles 2-item spike. Is it really just that simple?
I think for him, if you look at G2's summoner spells, it is almost impossible to set up a gank of his own. There's cleanse in the mid lane, there's cleanse from the enemy support, and that support can also eat his AD carry in case he's the one getting hit. So it's very difficult for Broxah to be active. His job is mainly just to keep up in farm and experience, and then try to get vision down to spot where Jankos is going. But that does give some control to G2 eSports at the moment.
And that means they get the dragon. There's no contest here. If you look at the vision from Fnatic, there's nothing to spot it out. So the first dragon of the finals, the Cloud secured amid some golf claps here in the Royal Arena, and Jankos has the potential of another gank, but there's some respect from Rekkles and Hylissang. They're back away.
This is a very classic game 1 of a final, where both teams are taking a little bit easy. No one is going for something completely crazy in the early game. Of course, also with scaling on both sides, the way you want to play these compositions is technically just farm up early on. The top laners are trading a little bit, but not a whole lot should happen from it, seeing as there's no junglers nearby.
So we're talking about scaling. We're heading into the mid-game. Do you prefer one team scaling over another? Deficio, what do you think?
Oh, I think with Tristana for Rekkles on one side, but a Jinx on the other one, it gets very evenly matched. The problem, of course, for Fnatic is that Karma's own damage, because she only has one real big damage ability to use, is definitely not the same as a Ryze. But if Karma with her utility can make sure that someone like Rekkles gets enough time to actually kill the front line of G2, then that might not matter at all. Jankos is trying again though.
Yeah, a little bit of opportunistic, as Caps is able to use that movement speed to escape, throws down the shield on the E and clears out the wave, still holding his own. I guess it comes down to playstyle then, because of course you've got the Feast on the side of G2, so they have a little bit of an advantage in that Baron pit.
Yeah, and also, just touching on that Feast around, we've got to look at Hylissang in the middle lane. Once again, looking for another row.
All right, let's take a look. PerkZ has already sidestepped Hylissang's Winter's Bite, and both of these mid laners, man, they are not going to give up easy kills. It has to be earned, it has to be taken on this stage, because neither of them have made missteps just yet.
Look how immaculate the farm is as well. 14 minutes, 50 seconds, and we're already cresting 160 CS across all of the carries. But it's fascinating, you know, we are here in the final between both G2 and Fnatic, something that many fans were hoping for, and for a while we weren't able to get, but now it's here, and you just have to imagine the pressure that's on some of these shoulders, because for G2, something that Ocelot said at the beginning of the show was there's a lot of new players for G2 on their side. The first time they've made it to the final, Jankos' first final, he had that semi-final curse that he was dealing with for such a long time. Hjärnan and Wadid, the new bottom lane that were coming in for Sven and Mithy. So much is on the line for so many of these players to live up to G2's long championship record.
And I mean, Hjärnan stepped up last weekend. All split long was a little bit of a second fiddle to the rest of the team. It was Wunder and PerkZ show a lot of the time. But in the semi-finals, Hjärnan's Jhin, as you mentioned in Picks and Bans, and just his performance all series long, really exceptional. He's going to need another outstanding performance because of the seriousness of the matchup and, of course, his opponent.
So now we've just passed the 50-minute mark. You can see some of the main key items have been completed, and I feel like both teams are looking for a fight.
Well, they are indeed. Rekkles is the one that starts it. He goes forward with that rocket jump. Hylissang splits up the team. He's already thrown down that Glacial Fissure. Let's bounce. Pulls back two. This is a bad fight for Fnatic. Hylissang's already down. Broxah's running for his life, and he'll get dropped. It's a double kill for Hjärnan, raining down the rockets onto Fnatic as Rekkles and Caps are running for their lives. Jankos gets two, pulls them back with the stretching strike. Defensive flash from Caps, and G2 find another, the third of the fight. It's a whitewash, and G2 are crushing Fnatic.
Fnatic started this fight here. Rekkles jumped in first, but then it was G2 reacting instantly, and they knew they could win it from the get-go. 2 kills now onto the Jinx. We just had a slow early game. Everyone just matching farm. When we talk about the scaling, we talk about a Jinx, she's now getting fed.
Now it's Hjärnan and Wadid that go up to clear out the control ward, but Fnatic are in a position where they think they can collapse. It's a 3-on-3 initially, but then look at the Ryze ultimate and the TP coming in from the flank. G2 just react quicker, and Rekkles is forced out of the fight from the get-go.
And also with PerkZ matching with that Ryze ult, we talked about that earlier, how he can just follow to one of the side lanes, and he's there instantly. And this Zac pick from Jankos as well, setting up so much CC. They all need to pull back 2 members of Fnatic so they can't flash away to safety. So far, the Zac has been huge for G2 eSports.
And now that is a 3-0 fight for G2 eSports. They've gotten a very solid early game lead, and a lot of the gold is funneled into Hjärnan. Deficio, you mentioned it. Trevor, you were just talking so much about he's an individual that eyes are on. Hjärnan versus Rekkles, the battle for the better Swede. So far, it's Hjärnan that has the advantage.
And let's see if we can keep it up, of course, because G2 have got that 2,000 gold lead. They've got a 4-kill advantage. But no towers have fallen, just that single dragon. The map is still wide open, and that is standing gold for both teams.
And we're just kind of waiting for another one, like the one we just saw here. Another big team fight, but both teams are fully committing with everything. Now, of course, the TPs will be on cooldown, so it might take a while, unless Jankos wants to do something. They have their winning bot lane with the Jinx. They're already on the way to pressure the turret. Fnatic looked for another pick, but PerkZ had his flash.
Yeah, he did have to flash out of that situation. Always means that there's another potential gank opportunity. But while all that action was going on, Hjärnan was just beating his way down onto the turret. Will secure the first objective of the game in favor of G2. And now you would imagine they're moving up towards the top side, where we actually see both top laners having a bit of a back and forth.
Yeah, they're fighting a fight between 2 turrets, in fact. And Wunder might be in trouble as Broxah is leaning that way. But as it stands, the arena here in Copenhagen is being brought to a standstill. There's a lot of Fnatic fans here, and they're going to have to rally behind the squad, who are falling behind as we get to 20 minutes.
Now, the one thing I will say about G2's comp is they do have a lot of magic damage on their side with the Cho'Gath, the Zax, the Ryze. You can see early magic resistance seems to be the name of the game for Fnatic, as Jankos looks for another gank.
All right, he's flashed in, uses the Let's Bounce. Realm Warp will deliver PerkZ into the mid lane. Glacial Fissure buys some time from Hylissang. Now he's the man that's in trouble. That Unbreakable will eventually break when 4 members are running you down. PerkZ gets his second of the game and turns the attention to the mid lane tower. There's no defense from Fnatic.
It's another play set up by Jankos. He's the one going aggressive. It looked like he was all alone, but then instantly, Tahm Kench ulti and Ryze ulti and 4 members of G2 show up in that mid lane. Hjärnan and the rest of the team, they're going straight towards the Rift Herald.
G2 utilizing both these globals to very quickly move from lane to lane and punish the slight mispositions that Fnatic are setting themselves up for. Hylissang gives away his life for his mid laners, and it will allow G2 to secure the Rift Herald.
Some of the big picks we looked at coming into the matchup was things like Ryze and of course Tahm Kench for Wadid, because they offer this global here. Rekkles is going all in.
Oh, Rekkles is engaging once again. Jankos waiting on the sidelines, but look, Wunder is taking so long to go down. Glacial Prism will buy some time. Devour from Wadid keeps him alive to escape.
Fnatic are really trying to get something here. Rekkles jumps forward again, but he's not strong enough yet to take down a tank. Let's see the play from before. This is a 1v2 initially, but this is why Ryze and Tahm Kench are so good, because now you can send multiple members to the mid lane.
So easy to collapse. Good ulti there from Hylissang, but then he becomes the target. He does have his flash available, decides not to use it because he thinks that the collapse is going to come down regardless. It means he will still have that later if he wants to go in for one of those flashy plays that Hylissang loves to make.
And early we looked a little bit at the team fight set up between the two teams, as we often talk about with these big hyper carries on each side. It's all about killing the tanks first.
Yep.
When you have a Cho'Gath feast on one side plus 2 damage dealers in PerkZ and Hjärnan, who are very good at just killing a front target, that's going to be superior compared to Fnatic's comp, which is a lot more focused on Rekkles alone, just trying to find one target to get that kill. And it's going to take longer for Rekkles to kill a tank compared to G2.
And I feel like that if Fnatic want to be the ones to have favorable setups in these fights, they need to utilize the poke that Caps will have once he completes the death cap. Deficio, you talked about how you typically do see a lot of AP being built on these mid lane Karmas. If you don't utilize it before the fight, his team fight value is largely diminished.
Yeah, and I also think we might see an Ardent Sensor come in from him, even though it's not the pure AP build, just because he needs to buff up Rekkles even more.
Of course.
So that is definitely a potential choice for Caps. That could be very smart.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on that itemization. Still have to finish that death cap, gentlemen. And while we're looking at the map, G2 using the Rift Herald very effectively. Already taken the top tower. It's 3 towers to 1 in favor of G2. Nearly 4,000 gold lead for the defending champions. And they're off to a very strong start, led by Jankos' early game impact. And the question we had, gentlemen, will the teams be leaning into their strong side, playing around their weak side? For G2, pretty obvious answer for Jankos. I'll play all sides, because he ganked everywhere.
Now, what's interesting about this is when we had Rekkles and Caps on PGL last week, something that they said was that in the past, G2 struggled to close out games. And it was often that G2 would draft these compositions where they'd have a carry top, they'd have the carry mid, and that they would find a lot of early game advantage because that's what their comp allowed them to get. But then they struggled to actually end things when their composition wasn't really designed for team fighting. This time around, G2, they actually have a good team fighting composition. They found themselves with an early game lead. And this time, I don't think Fnatic can just rely on the late game as they have done in the past versus G2 during the regular season.
Yeah, going to be very interesting to see the decision making, because now the Baron is an objective. Keep your eyes on that mini-map, as vision will become so important in setting up and playing around that objective. G2 eSports, they still maintain control right now.
Yeah, they're really far ahead in this game, also because their carries are the ones getting all the kills on their side. Wunder will struggle to battle against the cannon minion.
The most epic of all top lane battles.
Yeah, 2 banner of commands in the game already, both top laners. And actually, you talked about that early season games, Vedius, on how G2 got ahead early and then Fnatic bounced back. Take a look at the gold graphs of exactly how that looks.
And as Vedius highlighted already, G2 in these kind of games didn't have the superior late game against Fnatic. But it's different in this one. They have a Jinx on their side. We know Cho'Gath is so good at killing front lines in these big team fights. So G2 eSports are not going to get outscaled by Fnatic. And with them having this goal lead, as long as they play correctly, they shouldn't actually give Fnatic a chance to get back in the game.
That's the big question. Can they out-team fight Fnatic? Even though they have a pretty significant gold advantage at this point, they have a very solid composition. Fnatic, you can never underestimate them when you get into that 5v5 scenario.
Absolutely not, especially when Rekkles is on Tristana. Taking a look at the items though, a little behind. Eye-Edge, Shiv, and Zeal for Rekkles. Going against the Hurricane and Rapid Fire Cannon for Hjärnan. Void Staff picked up for PerkZ. So he's going to be hitting like a truck in these next team fights. You see the Realm Warp will deliver some problems for Bwipo, who has consistently been the target throughout the majority of this game already.
And G2 should get full mid lane control. They have the superior AD carry, they have Tahm Kench as well. You can sit there, save Hjärnan if he's too aggressive, or use that Tahm Kench ulti now aggressively to the sides. So it's very hard for Fnatic to play the map. They actually have to just concede the side lanes against the Ryze and the Cho'Gath, and it becomes all about the Baron. G2, they're starting it now. Let's see if they want to turn for the fight.
Find out. Teleport's coming.
They can just
in.
finish.
They're going to rush it. They're going to rush it.
Instant Smite is available. Baron is already secured. Broxah is now in the pit, but he's left alone. Glacial Fissure comes down as Wadid is going low. Going to get knocked out by that seismic shove. Here comes
it's a big one.
Fnatic may have found the fight. Jankos is going low. Cell division not yet popped. Bwipo's already killed the back line. Flash.
Look at Rekkles.
Fnatic are chasing. They're trying to cast G2. They've done it. PerkZ get one back. This is a messy fight as Baron will only be on a few members. Jankos has escaped with his life, and PerkZ will be looking to run down. Gonna try to survive, but in a 3-on-1, it is a matter of time, and your MVP will close it out with Hylissang.
What a huge fight for Fnatic. We were just talking about how you cannot afford to underestimate them in the 5v5, and G2, they were just grouped up in that Baron pit. It made it so easy for Fnatic to get the collapse, get the damage that they needed, and while they did not secure the Baron, they secured themselves 4 kills.
Well, let's see it one more time here. PerkZ's ult is not available. Otherwise, you normally kill the Baron and ult out with the Ryze and the entire team. But here it is now means they're stuck in the Baron pit. And look at the bottom of your screen. Caps and Rekkles are completely untouched. The only members taking damage from Fnatic are the tanks in the front. And this suddenly means that G2, despite being ahead in gold, cannot win the fight.
Oh, and then you're just setting up so nicely for Rekkles. He had the pentakill in his eyes, and while he did not get the last hit, he was able to help his team secure the winning fight. Only a single member walks away with the Baron on G2.
And it's very big to highlight that before this Baron was started, PerkZ used that Ryze ult to try and catch out a Sion. A little bit too over-aggressive, wasn't even close to actually getting him. That meant it was on cooldown, but when they rushed the Baron, just think about it, they burn the Baron, they 5-man Ryze ult out, Fnatic never gets these kills.
Chasing the kill ends up hurting them, but G2, they've grouped up. Only one member with Baron, it's Jankos, 1-0-5 on that. Zac playing exceptionally well. The siege is on, and the tower has already fallen. Keep your eyes on the minimap. Bwipo has got that unstoppable onslaught available, but not the greatest angle of entry.
He went to push out the bottom wave, hoping that that minion wave can take the tower as G2 just group up in mid. Fnatic don't feel confident to take the fight right now. 1 minute and 20 seconds left on the Baron. Fnatic could look for a fight, but Jankos is looking for one of his own.
That fight we had before here should be the most favored Fnatic fight we will get this game. One team is stuck in a Baron pit and they can't turn on your carries. That should not happen again. G2 are still in control, despite giving over some kills to the enemy AD carry. They're looking for another engage with Jankos.
Oh, the tension. The EpicSkillshot. Jankos is not fired just yet.
This is apparently not bronze solo queue where you face check everything.
You've got
Top tier quality.
You've got to show respect as well, but also Jankos has to be smart about his engage, because while he can create that kind of a distance between himself and the enemy team, the rest of his team can't always follow up on that. So he has to make sure that everyone else from G2 can follow up if he gets that kind of an engage.
Definitely the case. I mean, G2, yes, they're still in the lead. They got the gold from Baron, which means they are close to 4,000 gold up. Almost exactly, in fact. But taking a look at itemization really quick. Quicksilver Sash for Rekkles. Keep himself alive with his 3rd damage item and the Zeke's Convergence as well. Locket of Iron Solari, so there's some tools there. And as we crossed 30 minutes on the clock, you're starting to feel that ticking time bomb of Ryze plus Jinx.
I think a lot of AD carries would not go QSS here.
I agree.
You have a lot of protection around you, but I've seen Rekkles do this before when he's on mobile AD carries, because it probably makes him feel more confident in playing aggressive and being in the front. So it's a defensive item built to allow him to be more aggressive. Jankos, he's going in though.
All right, Let's Bounce is available. He's going to get rooted down. Just use defensively. Jankos pulls nobody back. This is a good start for Fnatic. Hylissang jumps onto the front line using that shield.
Hjärnan!
Sometime. Hjärnan is down! Rekkles dunks him! It's a double kill for Fnatic, and they've got the advantage.
Bwipo comes up huge, gets a knock-up onto Hjärnan, and the rest of Fnatic collapse. They have their eyes on the Infernal Drake, and they secure themselves another teamfight win.
Oh, Fnatic, that was a big one from them. It was even fighting, but we saw Rekkles get a ton of time to hit the front end of G2 before we got any fire back from G2 eSports themselves, and suddenly it's Fnatic in control.
Gotta track what Wadid used his consume on, because that was gonna be the primary target to keep Hjärnan alive. G2 ended up with a negative Baron power play as Fnatic have come back into this game strong.
G2, they were waiting for Hjärnan's flash to be ready, but it wasn't up for the fight. And then without the Tahm Kench, because he devoured Wunder to try and make sure he stayed alive, it suddenly meant that Bwipo with the big knock-up can actually destroy Hjärnan.
Just before that fight, Ardent Sensor also picked up by Cap, so all the tools to play into the Fnatic camp. That gold lead is dwindling. Gigantic crits onto Hjärnan as the tower is now being focused 4 towers to 4, and Fnatic are clawing this game back from the early game deficit they found themselves in.
You know, and it's funny because we talked about how G2 have this teamfight composition. They shouldn't fall prey to the mistakes of the past where they get these early leads and then they end up losing them. But let's keep our eyes on Wadid. You know, because he's going into the fight. The initiation starts from Jankos. The ulti from Broxah actually lands onto him, but he thinks, oh no, I have to keep Wunder alive because he's getting chunked down by Rekkles. But then he realizes, the actual carry that I need to protect ends up getting caught, and Fnatic are very quick to punish.
Gentlemen, can I just bring up a graphic we saw a little bit earlier that reminded me of how G2 and Fnatic games went.
And this is exactly what we were just about to talk about, right? The fact that G2 got this early lead, and in the past, their composition was a large reason as to why they ended up falling behind in the late game. But now, Fnatic are just finding these opportune fights and putting G2 in these situations that they're always the ones coming out behind them.
But if you're G2 eSports, you can still mentally reset, tell yourself you have a great late game comp, you still have a Jinx on 4 fully completed items at 30 minutes. You can easily win the next few fights. Fnatic have gotten the advantage now, but that can swing right back to G2 eSports in the next team fight. Baron is spawning soon. We know with the Cho'Gath feast, they can rush it down, either Ryze ulti away them, or look to turn for the actual fight. We have to see in the next one, because we know if Rekkles gets caught, or if he's not allowed to deal damage, Fnatic, they won't kill anyone.
Yeah, definitely the case. And looking at the vision setup for G2, there's a couple of wards actually pushed into Fnatic's territory, so a little bit of early vision is 10 seconds away from Baron. Thank you, observers, for highlighting that one. And G2 still playing defensive. It feels like Fnatic have had to play into the darkness so frequently because of the fact they played from behind from the early game, but they haven't made many mistakes. They haven't overstepped or been punished despite the lack of vision.
No, they've been the one punishing the small mistakes from G2. The lack of flash from Hjärnan, Wadid using his consume on Wunder to keep him alive, and then Hjärnan being slightly out of position, allowing Fnatic to get that punish down. Now they're going for a play in mid.
All right, Hylissang's going to use stand behind me. Jumps up, gets the unbreakable. Gigantic shield teleports in the back end from Bwipo. Flame Chompers might buy some time. Jankos is already going low.
Hjärnan's dead!
Hjärnan is dead again with flash and heal available. Bwipo's looking to find a little bit more. A flash forward from Hylissang. Gets a Winter's Bite as Wunder gets shot down in the back end. The kill picked up by Rekkles. Wadid not going to get knocked up, but it doesn't matter. 3 kills to Fnatic.
And this is the worst timeline for G2 as Baron is alive. Rekkles and the crew have their entire team alive, but their eyes are set on that middle inhibitor.
They got some minions coming. I think they want to go straight for the Nexus here. Rekkles on Tristana can kill these turrets so fast. Another option is just mid-inhib and Baron, but with 20 seconds still on Hjärnan, Wunder and Jankos even longer, they're looking for the finish.
The death timers are so high. PerkZ has to put on his blue suede dancing shoes to deal with 5 members of Fnatic. Wadid's going to help out for a little while longer, and Fnatic are chasing. It's Rekkles that gets another, the 5th of the game. And despite losing early, despite falling behind, Fnatic fight back and strike first in the Spring Split Finals. They've not finished the game yet because Hjärnan and PerkZ, they're trying to...
Hjärnan!
How did they do it? That was my win moment. But Hjärnan will not go quietly. He's flashed forward, continues to chase.
Gonna get the reset.
Looking for the rocket.
It's Cho'Gath!
Here comes Wunder. Caps gets taken out. It's Hjärnan gets a triple kill, and we're not done.
Oh my God, G2! They're able to get the base defense. Hjärnan, when it mattered most, comes up clutch, and only Rekkles walks away alive. Baron is up. Did G2 now try to go for the end?
They're going straight towards the mid lane at least.
No,
PerkZ is
no
here.
way.
Jankos is trying to stop a recall. He doesn't find Rekkles, sadly, so Rekkles is back in base.
Holy moly, G2, they're going to tank up the inhibitor turret. Keep your eyes on those death timers. 10 seconds.
They can't, they can't.
Rekkles is already alive. G2 realize the folly and the braveness. They've peeled back for a safe Baron.
So they can still go for that Baron. Yeah, they have Feast available and everything, but it looked like it was over, and then Hjärnan shows up. Fnatic were splitting between hitting champions and the Nexus, and this Jinx in the late game got enough time to get their first kill, and suddenly the Jinx pops off.
G2 now walk away with a 5-man Baron after getting a successful base defense. So at this point, PerkZ, you think he's going to die at this point. You think, oh no, there's nothing they can do, but just look at the damage coming out from Hjärnan, hitting onto the front line. He then changes his focus onto Rekkles, and as Hylissang and Broxah try to defend him, they end up getting shut down.
Now we have to remember, both Nexus turrets died, as we just see Hjärnan here get that last kill onto Cap. So if you are G2, you're constantly thinking, okay, there is a chance they pop a Karma, speed up, and Fnatic just rushes into this base if Fnatic are caught, also if G2 are caught out of control. But for now, they are still sitting with the base behind them. Fnatic are starting the Infernal Drake, and G2, they're not contesting, they're not risking anything.
Gentlemen, 2 Infernal Drakes for a team composition that does have slightly less damage built in. Could help out, but just how much? It's 35 minutes on the clock. It's an even gold game, and there are super minions pushing into G2, but Baron-empowered minions pushing towards Fnatic.
Let's see what Fnatic trying to do here. There's one outer turret left on the side of G2. They're currently hiding in the brush here with the tanks. I think PerkZ will get noticed. Fnatic will know exactly what's happening. Jankos checking. What a great first game. This is exactly what we wanted.
Please give me 5 of these. This is exactly what I want to shoutcast. Exactly what we want to see for a split final.
And to illustrate, this game could still go either way. The gold is dead even, but we're at a point where gold is going to mean less and less. The Baron is in favor of G2, but they do not feel confident enough to really leave their base when there is an exposed Nexus. The team fighting of Fnatic so far has come out on top because they've been the one finding those opportune fights. Crunching down on G2, who are trapped in the Baron pit, punishing the flashless Hjärnan in the middle lane. Can G2 finally find themselves a successful fight? One that doesn't involve their Nexus on the line.
For now, they're trying to stack even more armor because they know it's all about the Tristana hitting them in these fights here. Even PerkZ going towards Ninja Tappy. Chain Vest on his side. Both AD carries are leading the charge in terms of damage as expected. Of course, as we highlighted before here, the Karma does actually deal some serious damage with her poke. She's just not great in the really the quick fights where it lasts like 5-6 seconds. She only gets off 1 Q. She doesn't really add anything else after that. But long, drawn-out fights with a lot of poking and continuing to buff up the team, she adds a ton of value.
And then, of course, there's the AoE shield as well. Mantra E, unstoppable onslaught from Wunder. He's going to be jumping in. Wunder not going to be the target just yet. Gets knocked up by Bwipo. Bwipo's now running away. Stretching Strike going to be a little useless as the Glacial Prison buys some time. Still nobody caught. Extended long team fight. Exactly what Caps' Karma's looking for. But it was just enough to dissuade G2, push them back. This Baron buff has not equated to a loss.
No, G2 are just using it to defend for the time being. Just try and buy time for their inhibitor to respawn. Wait until they're in a state where they're in a better position to try and force some of these later fights.
Well, we keep seeing the team fights. Again, it's all about killing whatever meat shield is right in front of you. There's going to be a big blob on the side of G2 or a massive dinosaur, and you just hit him. You just try and kill him. And on the other side is this zombie dude, and of course, Broxah riding around on a wild animal. And it seems weird, but your job as an AD carry is just to kill whatever is right there.
You know, and we talked about how Wunder's ulti could be huge in helping that because it is the true damage. He will be able to chunk out a tank pretty significantly. But the other big thing in favor of Fnatic is the movement speed you also get from Caps allows Rekkles to reposition and pretty much play as aggressively as he wants. Deficio, you talked so much about how he, as a player, loves to carry. He loves to be in these highlight moments. And when you have the support that you have from this Fnatic roster, you can't afford to just sit there and rest on your laurels because he's going to be looking to get into the backline and threaten whoever he can.
And I really like that Rekkles is going Essence Reaver in this game. They're giving him more cooldown reduction on this AD carry just because so much of his damage comes from him correctly activating rapid fire. Just click the Q when you know you have a bunch of time to actually hit the tanks, and lowering that cooldown can be huge for Rekkles specifically in terms of how he can actually kill a tank on G2.
Hjärnan picking himself up the Blade of the Ruin King to help a little bit with the shredding through the front line. We'll see how much of an assist that will provide him with as G2 right now defending their base. Fnatic is a 5-man group. They have set up a slow push in the top lane. I believe the wave is pushing ever so slightly in favor of G2 towards the bot, but Fnatic are the ones with priority over them.
Oh, Fnatic all of a sudden have been in control. They've taken charge of game 1. Thanks to a series of team fights. If you looked at the first 20 minutes of gameplay, you think G2 have this game in the bag. If you look at the second 20 minutes of gameplay, you think Fnatic are going to have this game in the bag. And now as we get past 14 minutes in game 1, a big team fight, a vision blunder, a setup around Elder or Baron, which spawn in roughly the same time, is what is going to determine the victor of game 1 in our finals.
G2 still hiding around, hoping someone maybe face checks against the Cho'Gath. Not happening. G2 will look at this game and be a bit sad about some of the fights that happened 15, 20 minutes ago where they actually were in control, but they were forcing and they were trying so hard to catch out someone like Hylissang. He's the Braum, he's the support. You end up overextending, going for him, and Fnatic punished them because of it. But because we had that big play at the Nexus from Hjärnan, there's still time for G2 to win this game. Almost dead even in gold, double Infernal, however, for Fnatic's side.
And take a look at that 9th tower picked up by Fnatic. If you have just joined us, look at the minimap. Exposed Inhibitor and Nexus. G2 were able to defend their Nexus, much to my surprise, because of Hjärnan respawning and helping out PerkZ. But G2 are dancing on a razor's edge as Fnatic continue to pressure them. Right, 58 seconds for Baron, 40 seconds for Elder. Some vision in G2's territory for Fnatic, but neither of them have set up significant steps towards either objective.
It's really important to keep an eye on the vision control because Fnatic, by having all 3 lanes pushed up, they could maintain control over G2's half of the map. But with all the vision that they've now restocked themselves with, they can look to get mid-priority and start playing around either Elder or Baron.
You have to remember some of these AD carries in the late game. They can solo the Elder Drake. They have the lifesteal and the attack speed to just sit there, and while the rest of the team are keeping the other ones busy around mid, it is something we always have to look for when we have this stalemate around 2 big objectives. On the side of G2, they might look for something. Fnatic jumping in as well.
All right, Hjärnan sold his boots in favor of that Phantom Dancer. Let's see what damage he can put down or if he's caught out. Glacial Prisoner teleport to the back end. Fnatic, they've already got the passive from Jankos. The fight's not done yet. Rekkles is being trying. Focus down from PerkZ. PerkZ flashes away defensively. Rekkles gets him. Turns onto Jankos. That's a double. He's not done yet. Firing away onto Wunder. Looking for more. Winter's bite tags Hjärnan. Wunder survives for a few seconds longer. The bomb explodes. It's a triple. Has he
He's going for the penta.
Spring split MVP trying to find more. Doesn't want to go toe to toe. Shots back and forward.
He's going to kill it. That's the penta.
Going forward. The quadra. The penta kill for Rekkles.
Rekkles! What a hero for Fnatic! The superior AD carry comes out on top, and they're going for the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, in 42 minutes, Copenhagen, are you not entertained? Fnatic take game 1.
And this game showed exactly why Rekkles are the MVP of the Spring Split. The team builds a composition around him. They look towards him to carry the first game. He's dealing with a Jinx on the other side, a Ryze as well. And yet, Rekkles are able to consistently take down the enemy front line a lot faster than what G2 could do.
The difference in AD carry impact in that final fight was so huge. The fact that he had the support from the Karma as well, his positioning, the consistent damage that he was able to throw out was so much for Fnatic. In game 1, they put the emphasis on him, and he delivered.
And this is the perfect start for Fnatic and Rekkles himself, and it's a nightmare for G2 eSports. They played so well early on. I love the way Jankos was ganking on Zach. The use of Ryze ulti and Tahm Kench ulti. They were 5,000-6,000 gold ahead with a strong late game comp, but they could not execute the late game fights against Fnatic.
For the 3rd time in 2018, G2 win the early game, Fnatic win the late game for different reasons this time round, of course. But something that is going to play on both of these teams' minds, this crowd is so behind Fnatic. We'll find out how Fnatic secured themselves that lead. And for more, let's head to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Trevor. What else could we have wanted from a game one in this final between Fnatic and G2 Esports? We had a base defense, we had a comeback, we had a freaking pentakill. So I just want to call that pentakill up once again. Let's take a look. Let's look at Rekkles absolutely going off on Tristana. Guys, how does he do it? The resets.
He is just very good at Tristana, as we can see. But a lot of it came down to the fact that they had the karma that kind of enabled them to have the better team fight, in my opinion. And we kind of just see what happens when you can't really reach Rekkles in the fights. He just goes left and right with Tristana and kills everyone, and then it looks pretty.
I think it's also very tricky to play Zach against the Tristana that can jump, against the Braum that can just knock you up when you engage. I think Braum is also such a massive factor and definitely outscales the Tahm Kench later parts in the game because the shield blocks the AD damage, and AD damage is all that matters in fights like this.
Yeah, and Rekkles feels like a fish out of water when he is in this position. Exactly, and he grabs the pentakill in game one, brought to you by Acer Predator. Now, before we go any further, let's just talk about kind of the momentum and the feeling for this player and for the Fnatic roster in this moment. He gets crowned the MVP just an hour before the match. His team is up against the four-time champions, and he gets a pentakill in game one.
Yeah,
amazing.
It must feel pretty good, because the thing is, like, if you start out with an AD carry-centric comp where you basically like put all the focus on your AD carry that just won the MVP, and he basically just comes out and gets not just a pentakill, but also performs like really, really well in team fights, it's just really good momentum swing.
So this is what I want to ask you guys when we take a look at picks and bans for game one in just a second. Now, I want you guys to be honest and forgetting what you know about the pentakill. When you saw this comp coming out, a very AD carry-centric comp with a utility mid laner for caps. What did you guys think?
I mean, at first it was a little bit questionable. It is kind of a comp where it's the Rekkles show, and he showed up big time in the team fights, but I didn't like it too much, especially in the early game. You don't really have any lane to play to, and for me that is kind of what happened in the early game where G2 were the superior team.
Were they also superior drafters in game one?
I think what I liked about Fnatic's draft was that they forced a tank versus tank matchup. Coming into the second wave of bans, they banned the Fiora, the GP, which basically forced a tank v tank. I'm also questioning the karma a little bit, but I feel like the Fnatic comp is easy to execute because you have always something to fall back on. If you look at G2's comp, you need to snowball that game, play to the side lanes, use the Tahm Kench and the Ryze to basically snowball the game, and they had the opportunity to do so.
Well, we have to praise G2 for that with this draft. They did show up early. We're going to take a look at the team fight that swung out entirely in their favor and amazing. You had some good words about Jankos coming into this game. He was everywhere.
Yeah, he was everywhere. And like this team fight, especially the way it started out, I'm not sure if he missed the E or if he just jumped behind him, but him landing up behind the enemy team meant that he could basically pull in two members, pull him back into his team. There was no way of flashing out. So basically a beautiful setup. He was really well aware of how to space within that team fight. But in general, like the whole early game was basically like Jankos taking over, and that's something that's so important for me to see, because I've always questioned, even when I played against him, how active Jankos can actually be in those crucial moments. And when he's actually shown up to his first finals and actually able to put on a show to a certain extent for his team and be that main carry within the early game and the facilitator for his team, is just really, really important for G2.
And what I really liked about it was the fact that he was kind of enabling PerkZ. We saw him gank mid lane a lot. We saw him pressure mid lane, and that we saw PerkZ having a good game on Ryze. I just feel like they didn't necessarily know exactly how to execute the game.
Well, this is where I want to come back to what we identified as win conditions for either side before. Top lane was really a non-factor. Mid lane went in the favor of G2, but what would that bot lane possible discrepancy do? And we saw it in the team fights, we have to be honest. Now, I don't think you can pin that directly on the AD carries, but the way Fnatic played the team fights was fantastic.
So overall, I feel like in every team fight, when basically G2 cornered themselves almost in the kind of way where, like especially here we can see they start Nash, they obviously get it because they have the Cho'Gath, but they put themselves in such an unfavorable spot that, first of all, Hjärnan is not able to hit anyone perfectly. He's not in position. Ryze has to keep cutting back without hitting anyone, gets a lucky kill in the end, but overall the amount of positional mistakes that G2 put themselves in was unfavorable for Hjärnan. And I do have to call out that I cannot believe that in a game where it's all about the AD carry, you don't build items for him whatsoever. Like the Zeke's convergence has to come out in a game like this because Hjärnan was the main factor in those team fights and he wasn't able to play.
It seemed like they were banking on the PerkZ insurance maybe.
Oh, maybe. But I think the biggest issue here is that they are forcing the Baron because their composition is about playing the split push game. They have a weaker grouped composition. The enemy team is behind on gold. Ryze is going to beat everyone 1v1 on side. Cho'Gath gets Prior against the Sion. And in mid lane, you have the Jinx that is ahead of the Tristana, will one-shot the wave and Prior with Tahm. Means that you want to outnumber the enemy, which you can. But they force the Baron, put Fnatic in a position where they can group as 5 and put all these champions, the Braum, the Karma, in a 5v5 fight, exactly where they want to be. So I felt like they gave Fnatic the way back in.
And this is a bit worrying for me because if we look at the regular season Spring split, Fnatic is 2-0 over G2. And in both those games, they were behind and came back, and G2 wasn't able to close. So we're going to have to see how that evolves because that could be quite a trauma for G2 eSports. But 5 games, possibly only game 1. And if we know G2 eSports, they very often lose game 1 in a series. So what are we looking at going into the next game? They are now on blue side. G2, what's their priority?
I think something to consider. I was surprised that they didn't prepare a Caitlyn into Tristana because I think if you haven't done that, you shouldn't let go of the Tristana. Another thing is also consider picking the matchup for top lane early on, so it is something that can snowball because this time around we had the early kill on top. Nothing happened with it because it's potato versus potato.
I also just want to talk about, we wouldn't actually talk about how G2 should adapt if they just closed out the game properly, because they actually had I think a 5k gold lead in the mid game, and if they just execute their 1-3-1 and just play to that condition, I think they had a completely fine game. So I don't think they should change too much.
Yeah, I kind of wish they would just keep up this controlled aggression that they showed in the early game. Like, they don't have to change up too much in the pick ban. I think going for the Zac, going for something that facilitates a lot of aggression within the early game, like a lot of plays, is really important. So I do think they should just stick to the guns right now and do what they did in game 1.
Well, we will see. You don't want to see too many changes from G2. We're going to go in into game 2 quite soon. It's been over 2 years since Fnatic last had an EU LCS title. We will see what they can do and if they can extend their lead after this short break.